Go for it.
What was I saying?
You were saying something.
Idolism is the cause of the rising cases of misinformation that we see today.
Okay, let's digest that. Idolism is the cause of the rising cases of misinformation. Do you think we idolize? How I understand is like we have these people that we idolize. Some of them might be celebrities, some of them might be podcasters, some of them might be mixed martial arts gurus or whatever. Like alpha male, alpha men that are out there. Alpha women as well. A lot of them alpha women, right? And because we have this connection to them through the fact that maybe they're funny or maybe they're informative about one particular subject that we have a passion about, right? Or we're passionate about, and we'll let the plane go. And we resonate with them on that matter. But because we idealize them for other reasons, we also listen to, we believe the things that they say about things that might not be true because we idealize them. We might like a celebrity because she makes good music, and hence we idolize that celebrity because of the music that she makes, and that music resonates with you. But she might go out and say something that's awfully wrong, but you still believe it because you idolize that person. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I feel like a lot of the demographics of people in various countries which are conservative in the sense that they don't let other evidence ever really change their opinion. So conservative not necessarily meaning right wing. There are left wing conservatives in the definition that I'm saying.
There's a lot of left wing people who don't let
essentially people who don't resist change. They resist to change. They resist to change, right? I feel like there are a lot of examples where people in these groups will just ride or die with a particular individual that they trust, that they've received media from.
Or religion. You've grown up, you've grown up and you've been told that these are things that are right, so you don't really question anything, and you just believe what your parents told you, because questioning it would completely, it sort of becomes your identity then, right?
Questioning it also is just too much work, right? That's
more calories.
That's the thing we were talking about before, how it's very easy to just block out a lot of things because there's just too many confusing.
It's literally like going on a run. You think about it, because in like the energy mass equation way, right? You go on a run, you're losing calories. If you think too much, you're burning calories, so you just don't think much.
Yeah.
And it's easier to just not think.
It's a survival tactic.
It is
because the actual benefit of losing that energy is generally meant to be something that, I don't know, potentially improves your survival in some way, shape or form, right?
Probably live a happier life.
If it's just unnecessary, if you deem it to be unnecessary, it's just unnecessary information that's not going to help me in any sort of way. A lot of the time, well, tangibly, a lot of the times it's just going to be like, let's delete that. Let's not listen to that person. It's easier to just go with this because whether I vote in this way or whether I believe in this thing, what impact is it really going to have on me? What impact is it really going to have on the world? I don't know. A lot of the times you just deem it to be negligible and you just move on. I'm just going to take what this guy said at face value and believe it, not really question it because it doesn't matter. A lot of people feel like, again, it goes back to the whole thing. They don't feel like they're very well represented in society or well represented in a lot of the things they do because there's all these people and there's a very, you can basically fit into any group of people nowadays. You can just class yourself in a big cluster, a big category, and essentially feel insignificant. And I feel like a lot of the times that leads to no real desire for questioning, no real desire for maybe what I'm hearing is wrong, maybe I got to think something else, because you don't really place that much value to how you think could contribute to other people or to other things or to the world in general. You just think you're a little speck on a blue ball, So, I don't know, like in the case of India, for example, just because I see my grandparents, like a lot of the media over there is similar to America in the sense that there are particular newscasters which are just, that's the one I listen to, that's the one I trust, he's the good guy, she's the good woman, So, it's not even the channel, it's more just the particular presenter on the channel at times. Like in India, for example, obviously they'll link back to the channel, like this is the good channel, but the reason it's the good channel is because Lakshmi Singh is on the channel. You know what I mean? She's speaking the truth. I know because she also had 2 daughters and I had 2 daughters. All those sort of things.
Absolutely right that this person or this fact that I believe that this person said has to be right.
Yeah, because maybe there are particular characteristics of a person that appeal to them either because they feel like they're living the same life or they're I don't know. It could be that they had similar personal experiences, or it could just be like literally anything. Like, oh, this person loves Beyonce as much as I do. You know, it might not even be Beyonce as the idol. It might just be someone else. But it's the fact that they like something that you like. It's even small things like that. We just want to write off any reason to actually think critically about something because we'd rather just spend less of our energy doing that and just go with what someone says. Even in the case, a very literal case is like, you know, investing in ETFs or something, right? Or copying someone's stock profile. That's a very easy way to explain that. You don't have time to do it, right? You'd rather just let the money grow for itself, sit at the bank. But I think we apply that logic to a lot of things, including political opinion and hobbies and, you know,
pretty much everything.
How we spend our time.
How we live our life, the careers
Yeah.
that we pursue. Ignorance is bliss. Do you think that's why people who are actually smart throughout history have lived miserable lives?
Yeah.
Such the case of
They're always stressful.
Einstein.
They lose their hair first. They,
well,
you know.
Einstein didn't lose his hair, but he lost a lot of other things. I feel like.
I feel like Einstein took a visit to Turkey. I'm not gonna
I
lie.
think he might have, because it was like he was in Germany, but he went to the U.S. when the war was happening. But then I think he went back. And I think Germany, a lot of Turks were in. Do you think the Turks were already there in Germany that back then, or do you think that's when the Ottoman Empire fell? The Ottoman Empire fell in like the First World War, so since then they were called.
But
Turks.
he was always like an anti-German guy, like the German nationals who fought in World War One. He never rocked with them as well, so like maybe he had no correlation to the Ottomans. But I don't know. Point is, I feel like there are a lot of people who are pursuing to be idols because they also see the power that being an idol holds in this day and age, where everyone's looking for an excuse to just copy everything that person does, you know. So I think there are a lot of aspiring. What's the word that people use now?
Aspiring.
This is the influencer, right?
Influencers.
I feel like a lot of people see the power in being an influencer because it affects so many people now than what it once did. You know what
Also,
I mean?
it seems like the thing that holds the most power. You saw Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson, not because Jake Paul's the good enough boxer to fight Mike Tyson. It's the most watched fight this year and probably up there in the top 10 most watched events of all time. Like the live event, it was the first time Netflix. I think they've been live before, but this is like one of the biggest like showcases. The live stream was. I think that's. Did you watch it? Have you ever watched a boxing fight live before?
No,
I think majority,
not
thousands, millions of people probably the first time they're watching it. So, and that's not because Jake Paul is a good boxer. It's because he's famous, and props to him for getting to the point that he is. A lot of people are giving him shit, but a lot of people are also watching the fight. So why are you watching the fight? You're helping him out. Anyways, going back to the idolism thing, right? Because that people idealize people, particularly influencers, because look at what they're getting out of life. They're doing everything. They are the perfect example of what people think they need in their life to
and I think
attain success.
That's where I kind of can draw in like how there are various differences in a lot of like big like idea groups or knowledge groups, specifically like religion, for example, where there's a lot of differing opinions about idolism, right? Despite potentially all being from the same origin. Like, based on the evidence that we're seeing in this day and age, it could be that it's basically in human nature to praise idols, potentially, I don't know. But that's kind of the case in Hinduism, for example, right? The case in Christianity, for example. But in Islam, it's completely different. But despite that, despite the actual nature of it stating that it's a sin to idolize anything, right?
Idolize people, the prophets.
Even the humans who swear by that still find ways to live their life exactly the way that either Muhammad once did, or maybe in the words of their local imam, or the words of, I don't know, just a respected religious leader or member of their family.
Yeah, local mosque or whatever.
Yes, exactly. So in that sense, a lot of the religions maybe fundamentally might say that we should question everything, right? It is a fundamental characteristic. I know with Islam it is, right? But for some reason, humans in reaction, especially now, are veering more and more to the I'm just going to blindly follow something. In any respect, right? Whether it's the words of what someone says, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's a sports star, whether it's a politician, whether it's a newscaster.
What do you do then? if you, because let's say you want to get the news right. This is a common problem that I have, that I feel like a lot of people of our age group have. Like, we want to believe something. Okay, the U.S. politics, for example, because it's such an important issue, it has been. We want to believe that we see an article, right? And we're like, okay, this person might be right. And you realize, oh, that's not true. So you're like, okay, let me get it from another source. Maybe Fox News is wrong. Maybe this other news article is correct. Maybe that's wrong as well. And you're like, okay, let me not look at mainstream media, because mainstream media is controlled by these big corporations which have like other goals in mind, profits like their main thing. So they're not actually giving you the information. They're trying to make money out of you. So let me listen to this alternative source, alternative media, right? So I'm listening to podcasts. Maybe Joe Rogan. When I'm trying to Joe Rogan, maybe they're right.
Well, also definitely not trying to make money off of you.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like innately, every human is trying to make money. So are we. If you go to you're going to uni, you went to a selective school, you worked your ass off, not because you just wanted to become a charitable member inside of you to make money. I know a part of you will say, okay, yeah, I want to give back to humanity. Of course, we all do. But if you were not making money for it, or if you were not promised that down the line you're going to make money for it, you would never do it. And I would never do it either. So it's innately engraved in us. So this problem is always going to persist. And there's always going to be people who are abusing their power and not giving the right information, because they would somehow they would get more profits out of it or whatever. How do you solve that problem? There is no solve to it. There's no and the people who say that, oh, you shouldn't be watching these podcasts, you shouldn't get these your news from these sources, where do you get it from? Do you think they're right? Because the left will say these things, right? You see a lot of cynicism when it comes to like people who say that you shouldn't be getting your facts or opinions from people online, but at the same time you can't be getting your facts or anything from the people who are on broadcasting channels, because they're even worse. What do you do?
Well, I guess it comes back to the whole thing of how do you form your own opinion? How if you just take a load of data points together, all of which are meant to be facts, they're presented as facts, but they're all differing in what they're saying.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you're making the decision about which supposed fact you're going to believe in, that was a very biased decision that you just made. You made a decision that there are 10 things that could be true. One of them might be true. Maybe none of them are true. But you decided to go with one of those things, right? Or maybe create your own fact. All of that is essentially just enabling dishonesty, right? Like, how can you create an opinion? Like, how can you say that in all these supposed facts, whatever you choose isn't an opinion? That is an opinion at the end of the day.
It's not factual at all, because if you take 5 different facts about the same thing, presented as facts, one of them is a fact.
Facts,
one of them is a fact, right? You have 5 different facts that are presented as facts. You have to make the decision to form your own opinion based on these 5 different facts to come up with your conclusion. You might have a mixture of it, or you might just choose one. There's a 1 in 5 chance of you getting it right. But extrapolate that out to like a million, because there's a countless different opinions that everyone have, that opinions, but they're presented as facts. So in any given form, any discussion that we have about politics or something that is more, I guess, more nuanced than the things that we have discussing right now, it's going to be false.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people, a good analogy is like, if you're just doing a multiple choice test, right, and you have the choice of guessing A for every single question, or you have to read every question, realize you don't know anything, and then guess one of the 4 letters, and it'll be like A, B, C, A, B, D, whatever.
Guessing, right? Just guess it.
Which one is easier to do? It's just going to be circling A for everything and not reading any of the questions, right?
It's funny, because throughout history it's always been like this, but before people just thought that the one news channel that they had access to was the right news channel. But now the people say like, oh, it's becoming like, it's exhausting trying to figure out what the truth is. Whereas back in the day it was easy, because you just go to the news article. But that was not true either. You think they were telling the truth? They were not.
But at least back in the day, there was a chance of, oh, well, if I saw it on video, it has to be true. Now we can't even do that. Now we can't even be like, oh, I saw it in a video, so I know this isn't bullshit. No. Now there is no way of really determining what's going on. We can't take witness accounts, because they could be lying. We can't listen to people at the bottom of the pyramid or at the top of the pyramid, because they all have ulterior motives.
Money.
Or the people at the bottom might be being paid from the people at the top. There's no like documentation which we can really rely on.
What do you think the
without
solution is?
assuming that there's doubt in it.
Marxism. Remove the concept of money being an incentive for you to do anything. But that inherently goes against human nature. And this is why I'm an advocate for capitalism, free market capitalism, because it utilizes the innate human desire of greed, and it incentivizes that you have to be innovative, you have to, that's the ideal case scenario, is you only get it rewarded for solving problems and being innovative. People use it for other cases, to make money. But
I guess it's a seesaw with actually maintaining capitalism that allows a prospering world for a lot of people, because if you go too far with it and you enable human greed too far,
that's what we are at. Late stage capitalism, we call it.
Then there's not going to be any giving, right? There's not going to be any giving. So you need to allow people to have a level of greed and exhibit it in their actions, so that they can actually try climbing up the food chain. But also,
do you think you have it? You think you're basically saying you need to incentivize greed, but also at a stable level, I guess, or make people realize that too much greed is corrupts over time.
It shouldn't be an on and off switch. It should be a dial. That's really what it is, right?
Okay, devil's advocate, because I agree with you, right? This is the leftist argument. Well, the leftist argument, the mainstream leftist argument, is also the far right leftist argument that capitalism is causing all, is like the worst economic system we're creating, which is just factually wrong. Do you think you're greedy?
I really want.
Are you greedy?
Greedy. Well, we all are.
Relative, because you think greed is relative. Because if a kid from a favela saw you right now, he would think you're extremely
I think greed
greedy.
is relative to what you have.
Yeah, because
if you have more and you choose to do the same decision as someone who has less, the fact that you have more of it makes you more greedy. That's my belief.
I just think you expecting a raise every year is greedy. Because if you have enough money to live,
that's what I'm saying. If you are going for the same decision but you have more than another person, the fact that you have more and want the same thing makes you greedy. That's
one way of looking at it. Or the other way is just expecting to earn more.
That's why I'm saying there's a dial. Ideally, there should be a dial, right?
Because they say that about rich people, right?
The more you become happy with what you have, right? Rather than wanting to expand an empire and at the cost of others.
I think there's a lot that can
However,
greed.
It's human nature to look at everything relative to your current situation, right? To your status quo. So I'm not blaming people who have a lot of things to want to have more things, because we all see the teenage dramas of people in rich sort of families, and the girl is complaining because she doesn't have like a top line whatever, right? Something that 99.9% of girls will never be able to have access to. It's just a matter of circumstance and environment and what is relative to their surroundings, right? But that is human nature as well. So what I'm saying is unrealistic. It's an ideal world. It's a world in my fantasy, but if there was a way to tune greed, I think there is an achievable way of doing that. And I think it just comes from exposure, being able to create exposure amongst people who have the assets and have the resources to actually gain it. So for example, if you have a lot of money, or if you're going to a school which is more elite or essentially guarantees you to be the upper echelons of the society you live in, I feel like you should be having access to more things that allows you to appreciate what you have, right? Whether it's, in the case of the school, an excursion, whether it's engaging in more film, whether it's that's essentially the two things you can really force on kids. That creates a divide, right?
Because you're creating this classism-based divide that the elite schools only get to.
That's already the case, though.
Yeah, but
like that is the product of capitalism anyway.
Yeah, that's what.
But the only difference is that by being on the high horse that they are, they could actually look at other things and maybe potentially turn down their dial as a result, and be more happy with what they have. How many times have our parents told us, think about the kids that are in Ethiopia and Eritrea and blah blah blah, you got to finish the last grain of rice on your plate. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't get that talking to, right?
I feel like a lot of people don't see it.
Our parents have a lot more exposure to various global environments than someone who's had multiple generations in the same country, who's lived in potentially the same ancestral home or whatever, right? So I think exposure is kind of the key to unlocking a world where capitalism can actually represent all classes in a way which allows for progress generation to generation.
I think Australia is pretty close, Harry. I think Australia is very evenly divided compared to most countries. I know people over here, particularly in these suburbs, might disagree, but it is possibly one of the best places in terms of economic distribution.
Because a lot of people can have global perspectives because of how diverse the area is and our proximity to Asia and all those sort of things.
But so me and Zen were talking about this as well. Growing up, we'd always have this thing like growing up in Dubai, just complete like it's like when you're there, sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're like when you're driving around, it just feels like a different world, right? And then we go to Pakistan, we get this sense of like insane guilt, like guilt that I can't even describe because you're like just driving around with your family and you see like a kid who looks like you, who sounds like you, who talks like you, who's wearing the same clothes as you, begging for money with this, literally to your face, and you're like, what? All the things, everything that I was complaining about has literally for him, and you don't see one, you see countless of them just running around in the street, begging for money, and I think if people in the West, first world countries, just did that, I think that has like caught like. If I feel like if I didn't go to Pakistan, because I'd go like once every year, once every 2 years, and my family over there are well off, but there's obviously areas in Pakistan which are not. So maybe sometimes we'd go from one area to another area, and whilst we're going to the other area, we'd see like these things on the road, and like what is going on? Like how can I be ungrateful? Right? How can I feel this way? And I think that really grounds you. And I think if people just had the access to go to these third world countries and not as backpackers and live in the part of the country where there's only techno music playing, right? Not like the ones that the Europeans get their end up doing, but actually going into the villages and going into the slums and having excursions there. I think that would literally reduce the depression rate. That would reduce the suicide rate. I don't think there's anything.
Give people purpose.
It will give people purpose, and it will result in people feeling a lot more grateful for their lives and everything that they have and all the problems that they thought that they had.
I think the common argument to that is always like, what if people just become extremely desensitized to the thing when they have more and more exposure to it? But I think what people don't realize is you don't need like every single member of the upper class to flick a switch and then agree to pay way more taxes or pay to charities or etc. etc. You literally just need a few percentage points to shift in a different direction to completely change the world. It's always been the case. You don't need revolutions at this stage. You just need a few percentage points of people to just think a little differently. You need a few percent to make a few percentage points of change in their life regarding political decisions, monetary decisions, just the things they support, the way they go about their life, and how they communicate that to others, what they decide to tell other people to, right?
Yeah.
To their children, things like that. And it creates an effect where eventually, generations down, you'll have a completely different outcome compared to if you didn't give those people exposure. You know what I mean? It's not meant to be a revolution. That's one thing a lot of people say about like increasing access to education, right? Like on the left, a lot of people support a lot of educational reform and things of that nature, right? But like, it's not that, oh, you're going to give all of this education and then people are just going to get more greedy, blah, blah, blah. That could happen to a lot of those people. That might even happen to the majority of those people. They might use it to their advantage and not care about anything else that's going on, right? And focusing on themselves and to better themselves, their family, their loved ones, and then those around them. But if there's going to be a few people who previously wouldn't have ever heard that and had no other choice and just go with the flow with those around them, but when they hear it, they just might make a little difference in their life that could yield to eventually millions of people having different lives. It's all small change becomes big. It's compound interest.
I feel like the top 1% of Australia, not even the bottom 1% of Australia, if they start giving like 1% of their paychecks every month to a charity, like the scale factor of that in terms of how many people that's going to happen, it's actually immense.
But obviously, it's hard to think that when you feel like you're living in a tough reality yourself, right? Which is why for the bottom class, middle class in Australia, there's a lot of present day issues that are facing you right in the face. You don't even have the time to think of things like the rent and the food and all that stuff. But specifically talking about those who never really have to think about those issues, right? That is a huge difference. So the whole thing that people
But also,
say,
going back to like the division between people who never really have to think about those issues and people who have to think about those issues, I feel like that's relative, because you're saying that for some people rent is an issue. People who are rich, they might have a big mansion and they're like, oh, my rent's an issue for me as well. Like rent is, that's what I noticed over here as well. A lot of people say rent is an issue for them, but their earnings, they're traveling every year. They go to Europe every year. They travel to Bali. They're like, but rent becomes an issue because they're spending all their money elsewhere. It's really how you spend your money. Like the basic needs, it really depends on how you accumulate how you divide
how
your
about
wealth.
those who are like generationally rich who have like assets and stuff, like stable rich?
But then here's the problem.
I
How do you
know.
define where do you like draw the line? This always becomes a problem. Like who is rich? Because you are rich as well. Too. Like I am rich for most people. And then anyone who, like for me, I don't feel rich. But I know sometimes I think about it, it's like, okay, I make enough money. I make enough money to save this much every month. I live in a pretty nice house in one of the best places in the world. I am rich. But I don't feel rich.
Okay.
This
How
podcast is
about-
called Broken Whatever, right? So
How about it's more like the people who, if they stop working that day with the current assets and savings they have, they can still live in the standard of living that they're living for the rest of their life and not have to battle.
Standard of living is subjective. My standard of living is very different.
their standard of living.
But standard
what
of living?
they consider their standard of living to be.
Okay, it could be like
If they lived in a mansion or a penthouse, they can continue to live in that mansion or a penthouse. So what I'm trying to say is like, if there is some, so it is relative.
Yes,
Generally,
it's
it
always gonna be
targets like
relative.
billionaires because we can all agree that people who earn that amount of money,
Okay.
even if they live in the biggest house in Australia,
Yep.
even if they have X amount of cars, X amount of whatever, if they want to maintain that even, they still don't need all that money.
We can say that about millionaires as well. Why do we need, why does one have to be a millionaire? Why? Millionaire is a big quantity. It's a big amount. So to someone in,
I'm look. It's just because you said that like it could be different for other people, but I'm saying there's one group of people where it's just undeniable. That's
could
why
be
I'm saying
millionaires as well.
for the most part, it also applies to millionaires.
Could be
There could
someone
be
who has
some
100,000
millionaires-
in their account.
There could be some millionaires who, in the way that they're living, it's not sustainable
Why live in
for
a
them
big
to
house?
give up things and still maintain their standard of living. Like they might still need to downsize or something like that.
But then it just becomes to the point where a guy who already has a high standard of living then gets to become this other, like for him it's his standard of living is higher, so he doesn't have to like focus on giving back because he already has this thing maintained. Whereas someone like a young person who's maybe not that well off, or someone who comes from not the brightest background or whatever, has this lower standard of living. Yeah, I guess I see what you mean. Like there's going to be a caveat, but I feel like there's a lot more we can talk about.
There's always a group where there's just, it doesn't matter how they want to live their life. There's always just going to be a massive amount of excess.
That's
like when you see Narcos or whatever, like these guys have money buried in the ground, right? They're still living an absolutely lavish life. Sure, the money's security, I get that, but all of that money is just untouched. It's untapped. They have to dig holes for it, right? I'm talking about those sort of people, right? If you add up the actual value of those people in like from a money standpoint, from a contribution of nominal GDP standpoint, it just takes a few percentage points of their money to change everything as well, right? And for them, they will feel unaffected by it. That's the whole point.
Also,
I'm trying to make.
it's relative though, because your parents, if they probably have money, you probably have money that you're gonna never use. And if that gets taken away, you're going to feel unaffected. I feel like this is a topic for another podcast. We can discuss it. There's a lot to discuss in that. I've always played around with that idea, and I want to talk more about it. So I'm going to end it here. But there's a lot that